Welcome to the information on Chapter 11 covering diet and health. I'm going to start with a discussion of what a degenerative disease is. When we think of a degenerative disease, this is a chronic disease, which means it takes a long time to develop. It's mostly irreversible, and I say mostly because there are some diseases now we're realizing that we can't just manage them, but some can actually be, since you could say, cured. But for the most part, it's taken a long time to develop, and most of those diseases are managed. And it's characterized by a degeneration of the organs involved. What that means is that the organs are somewhat destroyed, or parts of them break down. They're not functioning as well. And there are many contributing factors. So it's not just one factor that will contribute to the development. It could be food choices, environmental factors, smoking, the amount of physical activity, the use of alcohol. There are a number of different factors that will contribute to disease development over time. Now, when we try to figure out the causes or main contributing factors to degenerative diseases, we look to a lot of population studies, those epidemiologic studies that we discussed at the beginning of the semester. And this is where we find correlations, which are associations. A correlation between a risk factor and disease does not mean the risk factor caused the disease. So what we'll see is a lot of associations, or factors that might contribute to the development or just be a marker of that disease. But they're not always causative, and it's very easy to get confused by this. Causation really means that it produces an effect. It's an act or an agent which results in an effect. And an example is, if you had Staphylococcus aureus, which is a bacteria known as staph, cause a skin infection. You cut yourself and you had a skin infection that was caused by Staphylococcus aureus. You know the cause. The cause is a bacteria. That makes it easy to treat because we give an antibiotic to treat the bacteria, destroy the bacteria, then we resolve the infection. It's much more difficult when we have a lot of associated risk factors. We don't have one single agent that caused it. And that means we have to look at a wide variety of risk factors that contribute to chronic disease. But remember, they don't necessarily cause it. So the key is that correlation does not equal causation. I'm going to go through a couple examples. I'm going to start with this one. This first graph here is the number of deaths from heart disease. And you can see a downward trend from 1980 to 2000. This occurred, we think, because of the advances in medical care, the more advanced diagnostic techniques, meaning that earlier diagnosis. So we have this downward trend. But what if we looked at some other information? This is the number of cable systems that individuals purchased between 1980 and 2000. And there's a clear upward trend. You can see there's clearly an inverse association here. As people bought more cable systems, the risk of death from heart disease decreased. So can we say that purchasing a cable system for your home is going to decrease your risk of heart disease? I mean, you would think I was crazy, right? To give you that association and make it causative. So there's a difference. There's an association. We can look through a lot of factors to figure out why we have these trends. They could be completely independent. They could have some overlap. But a cable system, purchasing a cable system does not prevent heart disease. We can look to a lot of other factors that probably decreased the death rate from heart disease during this time. I'm going to go over another example here. Now let's look at the prevalence of diabetes. You can see it increased from 80 to 90 with a sharp uptrend during 2010. Now a not so as clear line, which is Apple computer sales. And you can see the trend is similar. We're going with slopes early from 1980 to 1990, lower sales, and then it spikes up to 2010. Very similar. So based on this data, could we say that buying a Mac causes diabetes? No. I mean, again, that is ridiculous when I'm giving this information that looks completely ridiculous. Now, of course, we could postulate some theories that during this time people became more sedentary, they're playing video games, at the same time they're purchasing computers. So again, there could be some risk factors, some associated factors that contribute to it, but again, it's not causative. So these are very obvious examples, but when we start looking at more diet and lifestyle factors, sometimes that line becomes more blurred. So you always want to remember, correlation does not equal causation. Now, another confusing bit of terminology is the difference between a risk factor and a risk. Variables, and that's when you read studies, you'll see them talk about variables, are essentially risk factors. And that means they're associated with the increased risk of disease development. Smoking is associated with the risk of developing heart disease or lung cancer. Sedentary behavior is associated with an increased risk of diabetes. But then there's the risk of having a disease. So that's the complications associated with having the disease. Now, if we took diabetes, the risk of having diabetes, once you have the disease, you're at risk of developing numbness in your feet, open sores, infections on your feet, amputations, kidney failure, loss of your vision, heart disease. So there are a lot of risks of just having that disease. So a sedentary behavior is a risk factor for the development of diabetes. That's an example of a risk factor or a variable. But once you have the disease, you have a risk of developing certain problems. For diabetics, it's amputations, kidney failure, vision problems. And that is the end of our section on degenerative diseases.